Hi guys, so welcome back. If you've already watched our Mykonos video, then you'll know that we did a 7-day holiday. We did 4 days in Mykonos and we did 3 days in Santorini. So I've done this as 2 parts. I've done it as a Mykonos part and then a Santorini part. So this short video is all about Santorini, what it's like to travel in a low season or in early April, and then just things that we did whilst we were there and some of my recommendations. So we got the ferry to Santorini from Mykonos. If you're going to get the ferry, it takes about 2 hours and it cost us about £200 per person. On the ferry, it advises you to get there about an hour beforehand, but you really don't need to. Like, the ferry turned up at 11 o'clock. Like, say the ferry was at 11 o'clock, I think it turned up at like 5 to 11, and then it was a bit of a free fall to get onto it. So yeah, like, the hotel said you need to get there about 40 minutes before, and I'd say that's like probably accurate because we were waiting around for quite a while. But yeah, so got onto the ferry, a couple of hours, and then we got off at Santorini. What I would say is, if you're getting the ferry to Santorini, to book your own taxi. We didn't, and we thought we'd just be able to get one fine when we got there. When we got off the ferry, there was people with signs and stuff saying taxi here, so we just went to them because it said taxis here. And it was like a private company, but they were charging quite a lot of money, so we were able to get a taxi, and we used a company called Radio Cars, and they seem quite popular across the island. So we stopped at a hotel called Gigi's Exclusive. It was a beautiful hotel. It was a bit of about a 10-minute walk out of Imoglovi, so you're not right in the centre. So it was a little bit cheaper because of that, but we had a room with a hot tub and it overlooked the caldera, and it was just it was gorgeous. The hotel came for the room we booked anyway. The breakfast was included. I personally didn't think the breakfast was that good, but obviously that's everyone's opinion. There just wasn't that much choice. So day one, we arrived at our hotel and we just chilled in the hot tub, took full advantage of the views, and did something that you don't get to experience much. We stayed in our hot tub and watched the sunset go down. Then on the evening, we walked back into Imoglovi, and we just had dinner at a restaurant there. What I will say is, obviously, if you're not right in the centre, then you've got to walk to wherever you're going. My H&M heels that I banged on about in my last video and that I've put all over my Instagram, that were extremely comfy, they had to go away because the path was ridiculous. So if you're not comfortable walking, I advise you to get taxis or quads and stuff like that to and from the town, from the hotel, because the path is really uneven. But yeah, it just made it a bit funny for us. But Tom had to give me a piggyback at one point on the way home. So then day 6 of our whole holiday, obviously day 2 in Santorini, we decided to do a little hike in the morning. I thought it was just going to be a short one because it looked on the map it looked short, and from our hotel it looked quite close. But it wasn't. But yeah, it's called Skaros Rock, and it's something that's recommended by the locals, which we didn't know about until we'd done it. So that was really nice. So we walked there. It took us about 20 minutes from our hotel to get to the point, and then we did that hike. If you don't like steps, then I wouldn't advise you to go on this walk, and I probably wouldn't advise you to go to certain parts of Santorini either, because it is steps and quite hilly. But yeah, so the walk, Skaros Rock, starts from just past Imoglovi to more in between there and Fira, and it's a beautiful walk. There's a lot of steps, there's a lot of climbing, and I'll put a video up of what we did. But the views when you get there, they're uninterrupted views of the caldera, and it's beautiful. I think it took us a couple of hours, and then when we got back to the hotel, again, the sun was on our balcony and we like made ourselves chill, because we don't really do that enough, especially when we go on holiday. So we both kind of like chilled by our pool, by our hot tub. And then on the evening, we decided to walk to Fira. So Fira is about a 50-minute walk from our hotel. I put my plimsolls on. I think I actually wore this dress. Put my plimsolls on and was like, right, let's just go for it. We walked. We like weaved in and out of Imoglovely. We weaved past all the little hotels, because they're all like one-off hotels, or they're all like boutique hotels. So it just gives you like the real experience of Imoglovely and Fira and like that Santorini vibe. And I took loads of little videos and stuff. But we ate at a restaurant called Classico, which was really nice. And one thing to say about Fira is it's a lot busier, so everything different to Mykonos. So a lot of stuff in Fira was open, whereas when we'd been to Mykonos, we'd experienced like the towns to be quite closed and not very busy, whereas that was the opposite in Fira. Imoglovely is like partially open, but Fira's one of the, like, you've got two of the main towns here on the other side of the islands, like the main town, and then Fira is as well. So all the shops, all the not all, sorry, I'd say like 90% of the shops and the restaurants were open. So day 7, which was day 3 of Santorini, we hired a quad bike. So we did what the whole holiday was actually planned around, which was we went to go and visit 2 wedding venues to make a decision on which one we're going to get married in. We've been to Santorini a couple of times and it holds a little like special place in our heart, so we really, really want to get married there. So we've looked at 2 venues. One was called Cavo Ventos and the other one's called Al Viento. So that was just a really nice day. And then we hopped back on the quad and then went to Santos Winery. If you're going to Santorini, I would 100% recommend going to Santos Winery. We had a little wine tasting with some snacks. You get beautiful views and it's really, really nice. And we've done that a couple of times and it just feels a bit special to go there. One thing I will say about the quad is our experience in Santorini was very different to the one we had hiring the quad in Mykonos. So we asked the hotel to book the quad bike for us and they were like, yeah, not a problem. So they did that and we were like, brilliant. And we just assumed it would get dropped to the hotel like the one in Mykonos did. So she rang us, I don't know, like 20 minutes later and said it was here. So we went to the reception and there was a guy there on a bike, like a scooter bike. And we were like, oh, like, where's the quad? And he was like, oh, it's at the shop. So we were like, okay, well, like, how are we going to get there? And he was like, oh, just come on the bike. Well, I was in like a skirt, but it was like a wrap skirt. So he was like, you go in the middle to me. So I like got in the middle. And then he was going like, come, like, come closer. I didn't want to and couldn't because my skirt was literally now open because it was like a wrap like that. So by the time I'd sat with either leg on the quad, horrendous. So he was like, come closer. Tom sat behind me and yeah, we just got on the bike and went to the shop, and the shop was in Fira, so we were probably on this bike for about 15 minutes. So if you are going to get a quad bike, I would just advise you to go to the shop either in Imoglovely or Fira, because we looked on the maps and there were loads of options. We just thought it'd be easier to get it like through the hotel. And yeah, go to the shop and pick it up yourself. So yeah, and the other thing that happened with this quad as well was when we got to the shop, we said to the guy, he was like, what type of bike do you want? What type of quad do you want? Do you want like 100cc, 120, like 200? And he like, whoa, went through them really quickly. And we were like, oh, like the basic one's fine. We're literally just borrowing it for like the day to go and look at wedding venues and then we'll drop it back. And he was like, oh, okay. if you're in Santorini, do not get the 100cc or like the basic one, because it doesn't go anywhere. So like there were and the guy also got a map then and like mapped out all these places that we couldn't go in the island because the quad wouldn't get up the hills. So there were times that we were literally on this quad bike. I've got a video, but it's not very good, where we're literally leaning forward, Tom and I, up the hill, trying to like go like this, trying to get this quad up the hill because it literally wasn't going anywhere. We must have looked like absolute idiots. So yeah, if you're gonna get a quad, get one with a decent engine, and go and pick it up from the shop yourself. They're my top tips on getting a quad in Santorini. So yeah, went and looked at the wedding venues, had a really nice day there, went to Santos Winery, which is lovely, came back, dropped the quad bike back to the shop, and devastatingly, they didn't have anyone there to take us back to the hotel on a scooter, which was just such a shame. So we stayed in Fira then, because we dropped it back off in Fira. So we stayed in Fira then, and did some like just walking around the shops, getting like little presents for my two nieces. Like I said, it was really busy and open in Fira, so it was really nice to have that like holiday atmosphere, I suppose, when you're away. And then we went for a drink in a bar and went for like a shisha in a bar. I cannot remember the name of that bar, but it's really, really nice, and it overlooked like the caldera. Again, everywhere overlooks caldera. But that was really nice, like chilled vibes as well, so that was lovely. And then like that was the last day of our holiday then, so we came back from Fira, we were walking back, and we decided that night that we were just going to go and eat somewhere like super local, like a takeaway place, because they're really well recommended and like the food's great in them. So we did that. I think we went to somewhere called Let's Eat, and it was on its way back to Imogalovli. So we sat in there, ate in there. The food was insane. Like we had these two burgers, like probably one of the best burgers I've had going. It was so nice and really reasonable and cheap. And then we went back to the hotel, and that was our last day then. And then day 8, so the day we left, we just had like a chilled one by the pool. Like checked out of our room and had a chilled one by the pool before we left then. So what I would say, or some of the things that I would say to you, going to Santorini in April, the weather was definitely, I would say, a bit nicer than Mykonos. It wasn't as windy, it was warmer, but still on the evenings it does go really cold, like cool on the evenings. So like you need to be taking a jacket or a hoodie, like probably dressing in like longer dresses and trousers and stuff for the evenings, because it does go a lot cooler. So yes, that's the weather. In terms of like Fira, and I can't remember what the woman in the hotel said about Ia, but Ia's one of like the main towns. But Fira, like pretty much like I said, everything was open. So it was busy enough to have an atmosphere without being so busy you couldn't like eat anywhere. It is quite expensive, so if you want to have like a hotel that's not as expensive, you don't want to be booking like Caldera side. You want to be booking either on the other side or like a little bit in. As I said, it's quite hilly and there's lots of steps as well. But we've stopped in Kamari before, which is more on the beachfront, and that's flatter. So if you wanted to go to Santorini but you didn't want to deal with like the stairs every single day, you just wanted to go like into here once or twice and come back, then Kamari is a much flatter, and I think it's a bit more reasonable cost-wise as well to stop in Kamari. So yes, if you've got any specific questions that I haven't quite answered, pop them in the comments, and I'm no expert on Santorini. I've only been a couple of times, but I'll do my best to answer any questions that I can for you. And if you enjoyed this, then please like and subscribe to our channel, and I'll be popping more content on that's home as well as lifestyle as well.